See how they run, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Did you ever see such a sight in your life as 3 blind mice?
Picture this. I'm at my nephew's 4th birthday party, and all the kids are sitting in a circle doing the hand motions to 3 blind mice. You know the ones. Scurrying fingers for the running, slashing motion for the knife, wide eyes for, did you ever see such a sight? The kids are giggling, absolutely delighted, and I'm sitting there having what I can only describe as a full-body realization that we just taught a bunch of preschoolers to celebrate mutilation. I mean, let's break this down. 3 creatures, already disabled, already vulnerable, are chasing someone. Why? We never find out. And the response is to hack off parts of their bodies with a kitchen utensil. And then we ask, with genuine wonder, did you ever see such a sight? Like we're marveling at some natural phenomenon instead of describing what amounts to a war crime against rodents. But here's the thing that really got to me. Those kids weren't just singing along. They were into it. The violence was their favorite part. The knife motion got the biggest laughs. The running was exciting, sure, but the cutting, that's where the real energy was. And I sat there thinking, when exactly did I learn to find violence entertaining? When did we all? That's when it hit me. This isn't just a song about mice with mobility issues. This is a song about how we process our relationship to justified violence. About the satisfaction we feel when someone we've decided is a problem gets eliminated. And we teach it to kids as a fun little tune while they practice the motions of wielding weapons against the defenseless. What kind of collective psychological processing is that? Turns out this innocent little ditty has some seriously dark roots that make my nephew's birthday party look like a peace summit. Most historians trace it back to the persecution of Catholics during the reign of Queen Mary I, Bloody Mary, in 16th century England. The farmer's wife was likely Mary herself, and the 3 blind mice were 3 Protestant noblemen who were, shall we say, permanently silenced for their opposition to her Catholic restoration. Specifically, we're talking about Hugh Latimer, Nicholas Ridley, and Thomas Cranmer, Protestant reformers who were burned at the stake in 1555 and 1556. The blindness referred to their supposed spiritual blindness in refusing to convert back to Catholicism. The running was their attempts to escape persecution. And the cutting off their tails? Well, that's a rather gentle metaphor for being burned alive. But here's where it gets psychologically interesting. This wasn't just a song about historical events. This was a way for people to process and maybe even celebrate state-sanctioned violence. It was a coded way of saying, remember when those troublemakers got what was coming to them? It was how a society dealt with the cognitive dissonance of watching people they knew get tortured and killed for their beliefs. Think about that. We've been passing down a celebration of religious persecution for over 400 years, disguised as a children's game. We've been teaching kids to find satisfaction in the elimination of those who don't conform, and we've been doing it with cute little finger motions and sing-along melodies. But wait, it gets darker. Some versions of the historical interpretation suggest the song was actually pro-Catholic, meaning it was celebrating Mary's successful elimination of Protestant heretics. Others argue it was anti-Catholic, a way for Protestants to remember and process the trauma of persecution. Either way, we're talking about a song that helped people make sense of religious violence by turning it into entertainment. That's some seriously twisted psychological processing right there. Now, before you start feeling guilty about every time you've sung this song, let me be clear. I'm not here to shame anyone for participating in centuries of inherited trauma processing. We're all products of the stories we've inherited, and most of us had no idea what we were really singing about. But that's exactly why this stuff matters for shadow work. Because here's the uncomfortable truth that this song is pointing toward. Most of us have a part of ourselves that finds violence satisfying under certain circumstances. We tell ourselves it's only when it's justified, when someone deserves it, when it's self-defense, when they had it coming, when they're the ones causing problems. We love our action movies where the bad guy gets spectacularly eliminated. We enjoy our true crime podcasts where justice is finally served. We feel a little rush of satisfaction when someone we don't like gets their comeuppance. We participate in cancel culture with the righteous fury of medieval inquisitors, wielding social media like carving knives to cut off the metaphorical tails of those who've transgressed. And that's the shadow this nursery rhyme is pointing toward, our capacity for dehumanizing others when we decide they're the enemy. Those mice aren't just mice in the song, they're blind mice, which makes them both pitiable and somehow threatening. They're described as chasing the farmer's wife, though we never learn why. Maybe they were hungry, maybe they were confused, maybe they were just trying to survive in a world that literally couldn't see them clearly. But none of that matters once we've labeled them as the problem that needs cutting away. Sound familiar? It should. It's the same psychological process that lets us cheer when those people get put in their place, when the troublemakers get silenced, when someone we don't like faces consequences. We tell ourselves it's justice, but sometimes, if we're really honest, it's just violence with better PR. So here's where the shadow work gets personal, friends. I want you to think about the blind mice in your own life, the people or parts of yourself that you've decided deserve whatever's coming to them. Maybe it's that coworker who always takes credit for your ideas. Maybe it's your ex who cheated and destroyed everything you built together. Maybe it's politicians you despise, or that neighbor whose dog barks at 6 a.m. every morning, or your mother-in-law who still treats you like you're not good enough for her precious child. Or maybe, and this is where it gets really uncomfortable, it's parts of yourself, your laziness that keeps you from achieving your goals, your neediness that drives people away, your anger that erupts at inappropriate moments, your fear that keeps you small, your shame that whispers horrible things about your worth. Here's what I've learned through doing this work. Every time we decide someone, including ourselves, deserves punishment, deserves pain, deserves to be cut away and discarded, we're singing a version of Three Blind Mice. We're finding satisfaction in suffering even when we call it justice or self-improvement or tough love. And the most insidious part? We often can't see our own participation in this because, like those children at the birthday party, we've learned to make violence feel playful, righteous, even necessary. We've learned to dress up our desire to eliminate problems as moral clarity. The real shadow work here isn't about becoming a pacifist or pretending violence is never necessary in extreme situations. It's about getting honest about how much we actually enjoy it when people get what we think they deserve. It's about recognizing that every time we write someone off as irredeemably bad, every time we secretly celebrate someone's downfall, every time we decide that certain people don't deserve compassion or understanding, we're wielding that carving knife. We're cutting off the possibility of connection, of empathy, of seeing shared humanity, even in people we don't like. And here's the kicker. When we do this to others, we inevitably do it to ourselves. Those parts of us we've decided are unacceptable, those blind mice aspects of our own nature, our neediness, our mistakes, our very humanness. We turn the knife on them too. We become farmers' wives in our own inner landscape, chasing down the vulnerable parts of ourselves that can't see clearly and cutting off whatever we decide is problematic. We eliminate our capacity for joy because it seems frivolous. We slice away our need for connection because it feels needy. We hack off our anger because nice people don't get mad. We amputate our sexuality because good girls don't want those things. And then we wonder why we feel disconnected from ourselves, why we can't access our full range of human experience, why we feel like we're running through life half blind ourselves. Here's a question that'll keep you up at night. What if you're not the mice in this story? What if you're the farmer's wife? Think about it. The mice are just trying to survive, running around in a world they can't fully navigate, bumping into things, probably making mistakes, definitely causing some chaos. They're not evil. They're just mice being mice in a world that wasn't designed for them. But the farmer's wife, she's the one with the power. She's the one with the knife. She's the one who decides that the solution to the problem of chaos and confusion is elimination. So I want you to think about the times when you've been the farmer's wife, when you've decided that the solution to someone else's messy humanity was to cut them out of your life, cut them down to size, cut them off from resources or respect or connection. When have you wielded the carving knife of judgment, deciding that someone's blindness, their inability to see things the way you see them, made them deserving of punishment? When have you participated in the cultural sport of cutting off tails, destroying someone's reputation, eliminating their platform, amputating their ability to participate in community because you decided they were the problem that needed solving? And most importantly, when have you done this to yourself? Let's talk about the different carving knives we use, because not all violence looks like actual knives. Some of us use the blade of silence, cutting people off through withdrawal, withholding communication, emotionally amputating them from our lives without explanation. Others prefer the knife of public shaming, using social media or gossip or professional consequences to slice away someone's reputation and social standing. We tell ourselves we're holding people accountable, but sometimes we're just enjoying the power of the blade. Then there's the scalpel of perfectionism that we turn on ourselves, carefully cutting away every part of our humanity that doesn't meet impossible standards. We eliminate our right to make mistakes, amputate our permission to be learning and growing, slice off our capacity for self-compassion. Some of us wield the machete of black and white thinking, hacking away all the complexity and nuance that makes people human, reducing everyone to either hero or villain, good or bad, acceptable or eliminatable. And then there's the surgical precision of intellectual superiority, using our education, our awareness, our spiritual development as weapons to cut other people down to size. We slice away their right to be wrong, amputate their permission to be less evolved than us, eliminate their humanity, because they don't know what we know. But here's what's interesting. Just like in the London Bridge song, none of these materials actually work long-term. Silence creates more problems than it solves. Public shaming backfires and creates martyrs. Perfectionism leads to paralysis. Black and white thinking makes us unable to navigate a gray world. Intellectual superiority isolates us from the very people we might learn from. The carving knife approach to human problems has the same fundamental flaw as trying to build bridges out of wood and clay. It feels effective in the moment, but it doesn't create lasting solutions. Here's the thing that this song doesn't tell you, but the shadow work reveals. We're all blind mice. Every single one of us is running around in a world we can't fully see, bumping into things, making mistakes, causing unintentional chaos. Your ex who cheated? Blind mouse, running around, trying to meet needs they probably couldn't even name, bumping into your relationship in ways that cause terrible damage. Your coworker who takes credit? Blind mouse, probably running from some deep insecurity, trying to navigate a professional world that feels threatening. That politician you hate? Blind mouse in a system that rewards certain behaviors, probably running from childhood wounds and toward approval in ways that cause harm to others. Your mother-in-law who criticizes everything? Blind mouse, trying to maintain some sense of control and relevance in a world that's changing faster than she can adapt. And you? Also a blind mouse, my friend. We all are. We're all running around with limited vision, trying to survive in a world that often feels hostile or confusing, sometimes bumping into other people in ways that cause pain. The farmer's wife response is to eliminate the problem mice. The shadow work response is to recognize that we're all just trying to find our way in the dark. Here's what I'm not saying: that you need to tolerate harmful behavior, that boundaries are bad, that people shouldn't face consequences for their actions. What I'm inviting you to consider is whether you can hold people accountable without dehumanizing them, whether you can protect yourself without celebrating others' pain. Because here's the thing about those three blind mice. They were already blind. They were already disadvantaged, already struggling to navigate a world they couldn't fully see. And instead of compassion, guidance, or even just getting out of their way, they got blades. How many times do we do this to each other? How many times do we respond to someone's blindness, their inability to see what we see, to navigate as skillfully as we think they should, with some version of cutting them down? And how many times do we do this to ourselves, wielding carving knives against the parts of our own nature that feel too chaotic, too needy, too blind to deserve continued existence? Three blind mice teaches us something that most conflict resolution workshops won't. Sometimes the problem isn't the mice. Sometimes the problem is our relationship to chaos, our intolerance for blindness, our assumption that elimination is the only solution to behaviors we don't like. What if the real wisdom isn't about more effective ways to wield carving knives? What if it's about learning to coexist with blindness in others and in ourselves without resorting to violence? What if the farmer's wife had simply stepped aside and let the mice run past? What if she'd recognized that their blindness made them more vulnerable, not more dangerous? What if she'd put down the knife and picked up something more useful? Maybe a broom to gently guide them toward the door, or a flashlight to help them see where they were going. The shadow wisdom of this song is that our first impulse when faced with chaos is usually violence. Cutting away, eliminating, punishing, removing the source of disorder. But the deeper wisdom is that chaos and blindness are part of the human condition. We're all running around with limited vision, bumping into each other, making messes, causing unintentional harm. The question isn't how to eliminate the blind mice in our lives. The question is how to become the kind of farmer's wife who reaches for guidance tools instead of cutting tools, who responds to blindness with compassion instead of blades. So the next time you hear three blind mice, don't just think about medieval persecution or childhood entertainment. Think about it as a song about choice, the choice between violence and compassion when faced with chaos, between elimination and coexistence when encountering blindness. Think about it as a song about recognizing the farmer's wife in yourself and asking, what tools am I reaching for when I encounter behavior I don't like? What's my default response to people who can't see what I see or navigate as skillfully as I think they should? And maybe, just maybe, think about it as a song about liberation. The liberation that comes from putting down the carving knife and discovering that you have other options. That you can protect yourself without destroying others. That you can maintain boundaries without wielding blades, that you can coexist with blindness in others and in yourself, without needing to eliminate everything that feels chaotic or confused,